Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm, the kind you don't question until it starts unraveling right in front of you. My days revolved around long hours at work, the occasional poker night with the guys, and weekends spent under the hood of my car. Nothing major, just routine oil changes, tire rotations, a new air filter here and there. It was my way of unwinding, finding some sense of control in the mechanical precision of it all. Mike had been my go-to guy for the bigger repairs, the ones beyond my expertise. His shop, a small, greasy hole-in-the-wall operation, had been a second home for my car for years. We weren't best friends, but we had built an easy rapport, trading jokes, swapping stories about bad customers, complaining about the price of parts. There was a trust there, the kind built over a decade of handshakes and fair prices. But life has a way of shifting, sometimes so subtly you don't even notice. My job had picked up, deadlines stacking on top of each other, turning my weekdays into a blur of conference calls and late nights. At first, Jessica offering to handle the car maintenance seemed like a small blessing. She didn't mind, she had said, and it would save me a trip. It made sense. Why fight it? And yet, looking back, there had been signs. The first time the check engine light came on, I barely raised an eyebrow. Cars had quirks. I figured it was a sensor acting up or a gas cap not tightened properly. Jessica had taken the car in the next day, and Mike had fixed it without charging me. That should have stood out, Mike never did free work. A few weeks later, the light flickered on again. Same problem, same quick trip to the shop. Jessica assured me it was nothing, just a minor issue. But then, it happened again. And again. Always the same pattern, the mysterious engine light, her eagerness to take care of it, Mike's miraculous fix. I told myself I was being paranoid. Jessica started coming home with a different energy, a lightness that hadn't been there before. I'd barely notice when she left the house anymore, one minute she'd be in the kitchen, the next she'd be gone. Sometimes, I'd catch a whiff of a new perfume, something musky, unfamiliar. She had been dressing differently, too, nothing drastic, but small changes that only someone paying attention would catch. A little more effort, a little more time spent in front of the mirror before she ran out to pick up groceries, or meet a friend. It was easy to ignore at first. Easy to write off as normal. Then came the excuses. One night, I mentioned that I'd take the car in myself next time, maybe swing by and grab a beer with Mike while he looked it over. Jessica had barely hesitated before shaking her head. She had already scheduled an appointment. It would be easier if she handled it. Easier for who? The thought came and went, unspoken but lingering. Still, I let it go. But the car trips continued, even when the check engine light wasn't on. Just for a quick inspection, she'd say. It's good to stay on top of things. I had never seen her so invested in vehicle maintenance before. The realization came in waves, slow at first, then suffocating. That evening, I had been searching for an old receipt in the glove compartment. My fingers brushed against something unexpected, something small and crinkled. My first thought was that it was just trash, a crumpled piece of plastic or a stray wrapper from an energy bar. But then I pulled it out. My breath hitched. My fingers tightened around the thin, rubbery texture. A used condom. Tucked carelessly between the old insurance papers and an expired parking pass. For a long moment, I just stared at it, unblinking. We never used condoms. A cold sensation spread through my chest, a slow burn that started in my stomach and worked its way up to my throat. The weight of it in my hand was unbearable. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't some stray piece of trash that had somehow found its way into my glove compartment. This was evidence. Of what, I already knew. I closed the glove box, fingers moving mechanically, heart hammering against my ribs. The walls of my car suddenly felt too tight, the air too thick. My mind raced through every possibility, every excuse I could cling to, but none of them held up. She had been in this car, in my car, with someone else. With Mike. The thought came unbidden, hitting me like a punch to the gut. It made sense. Too much sense. My wife had been cheating on me. With the one guy I had trusted enough to work on my car, the guy who had stood next to me in my driveway, beer in hand, pretending to be my friend. A sick, twisted sense of irony settled in. I had been paying him to service my car while he was servicing my wife. My fingers curled into a fist, my nails digging into my palm. Rage surged through me, hot and blinding. But it didn't last. Because beneath the anger, beneath the humiliation, there was something colder. A realization. If Jessica thought she was getting away with this, she was dead wrong. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to confront her in some messy, dramatic blowout. That would be giving her too much power. No. I was going to handle this differently. I was going to take my time. And when I was ready, they would both regret ever thinking they could play me. Sleep didn't come that night. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, suffocating under the weight of realization. Every little moment that I had brushed off as nothing suddenly sharpened into painful clarity: Jessica's new perfume, the way she always seemed distracted, how she pulled away when I reached for her. The warmth between us had been replaced by something cold, something calculated. I had told myself we were just going through a phase, that marriage had its ups and downs. I had been a fool. Betrayal wasn't a single event. It was a slow unraveling, a gradual erosion of trust that you don't notice until there's nothing left but ruins. And as I lay there, Jessica sleeping soundly beside me, I realized how blind I had been. She hadn't even tried to hide it, not really. She had just relied on my trust, on my belief that she was incapable of doing something like this. But now I knew better. Confronting her right away would have been easy. A screaming match, accusations thrown back and forth, tears and apologies, none of it would change the fact that she had already made her choice. And if she had done this so brazenly, right under my nose, who's to say she wouldn't just lie her way out of it? I needed proof. Not just for me, but for the inevitable fallout. The next morning, while Jessica was in the shower, I slipped out to the garage and got to work. A small, discreet dash cam, motion-activated, high-resolution, capable of capturing everything that happened inside the car. I tucked it neatly under the dashboard, hidden from view but with a perfect angle. I knew the routine now. The car would leave the driveway soon enough, and when it did, I would finally see the truth laid bare. The waiting was the worst part. I went about my day as usual, pretending everything was fine. I kissed her cheek when she left, forced a smile when she told me she'd be running a few errands. Watching her walk away, knowing exactly where she was going, twisted something inside me. Hours passed. I distracted myself with work, mindless tasks that barely kept the rage at bay. And then, finally, the car returned. My hands were steady as I retrieved the footage, but my heart was a different story, pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I took a deep breath, bracing myself, and pressed play. At first, it was nothing. The car sat parked, empty, the faint hum of passing traffic in the background. Then, movement. The driver's side door opened, and Jessica slid into the seat. She wasn't alone. Mike followed right after, settling into the passenger seat with the ease of someone who had done this before. The familiarity between them was unmistakable. The way she leaned into him, the way he placed a hand on her thigh without hesitation. They laughed together, a private joke exchanged, their voices muffled but clear enough. And then it happened. There, in my car, the one I had worked on with my own hands, the one I had trusted to carry my family safely, she gave herself to him. Right there, like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. I should have looked away. I should have stopped watching. But I couldn't. It wasn't just the act itself, it was the way they carried on, as if this was routine, as if they had done this many times before. The way she touched him, the way he kissed her neck, the way they moved together, it was too familiar, too practiced. This hadn't started yesterday. My stomach twisted. It wasn't just about cheating. It was about humiliation. The car, my car, had become their meeting place. Every drive to the mechanic, every so-called errand, every extra trip she insisted on taking, it had all been a cover. And Mike, the man I had trusted, had been using my own damn vehicle as his personal hideaway. The footage ended, the screen going dark, but the images burned into my brain wouldn't fade. I sat there for a long time, my hands gripping the table, knuckles white. There was no denying it anymore. No excuses, no second-guessing. I had my proof. And now, I had a plan. Anger was too easy. That was the mistake most men made, exploding in rage, throwing accusations, demanding answers that they already knew. But yelling wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't erase the footage burned into my memory, wouldn't undo the betrayal. Jessica had made her choice. Mike had made his. Now, it was my turn. The first step was securing the evidence. The raw footage sat on my laptop like a loaded gun, every frame a painful reminder of how foolish I had been. I copied it onto multiple USB drives, tucking them away in different places. A backup on a cloud drive, another hidden in my office drawer, one in a safe deposit box at the bank. If Jessica tried to lie, if she attempted to twist the story into something it wasn't, I would be ready. This wasn't about revenge in the way most people thought of it. I wasn't interested in screaming matches or drunken threats. Jessica could have Mike. They deserved each other. But they weren't going to get away with it. Not quietly. Not cleanly. The idea came to me in the dead of night, clarity cutting through the haze of betrayal. It was simple. Elegant, even. Jessica and Mike had turned my car into their personal hideaway. They had chosen their battleground. Now, I would choose mine. The internet had a way of exposing people in ways they never anticipated. A bad review could kill a business. A viral post could ruin a reputation. And I was about to combine both. The first draft of the advertisement came together easily, each word deliberate, designed to spread like wildfire. It wasn't vulgar. It wasn't overtly aggressive. But it was damning. Thinking of getting your car serviced at Mike's Auto? Be careful, he might be servicing more than just your engine. Ask my wife, Jessica, for a review. I set it to post across every local review site, Google, Yelp, Facebook, even small-town community pages where nosy neighbors thrived on gossip. Scheduled for peak viewing hours, when people were scrolling after dinner, unwinding for the night. Then, I took it one step further. Flyers. Hundreds of them. Each one featured a few select screenshots from the dash cam footage, not too explicit, but just enough to tell the story. The caption beneath was short and sharp. Do you trust your mechanic? My wife did. I printed them in stacks, each sheet crisp and damning. This wasn't just about exposing them, it was about making sure they couldn't ignore it. No matter where they went in town, their actions would follow them. By the time the sun rose, my plan was set in motion. First, the flyers. I worked methodically, moving through the neighborhood with quiet efficiency. Every car windshield in the parking lot outside Mike's shop got one. A few taped to nearby lampposts, bus stops, bulletin boards. The front door of his garage. The window of Jessica's favorite coffee shop. Even slipped under the windshield wipers of our own neighbors' cars. Everywhere they turned, the truth would be waiting. The online ad went live next. Within minutes, the post started gaining traction. People loved scandal, and small towns were a breeding ground for it. It didn't take long before the messages started rolling in. Friends. Strangers. People who had suspected, people who were shocked, people who just wanted to watch the carnage unfold. By the time Jessica and Mike realized what had happened, it would be too late. The damage was already done. The world was still asleep when I stepped outside that morning. The air was crisp, the streets empty, the sky just beginning to lighten with the first hints of dawn. It was the perfect time to begin. The flyers sat in the passenger seat, stacked neatly, waiting. I had printed more than I needed, but excess was better than shortage. I moved methodically, like a soldier carrying out a mission, hitting every high-traffic area first. The town square. The shopping center. The grocery store parking lot. Rows of windshields became my canvas, each flyer a silent, undeniable truth waiting to be found. I took my time at Mike's Auto, pressing the papers against the glass with deliberate care. One on the front door, another on the side entrance, a few scattered over the parked cars outside. His customers would see them before stepping inside. His employees would see them before clocking in. Everywhere he turned, the evidence of his betrayal would be staring back at him. By mid-morning, the town was stirring, but I was already ahead of them. The flyers had spread like wildfire. Some people ignored them, brushing them off their windshields without a second glance. Others stopped, read, whispered. Some pulled out their phones, snapping pictures, forwarding them to friends. Gossip was the lifeblood of a small town, and I had just injected it with pure scandal. As noon approached, I moved to the final step. My laptop sat open on the hotel desk, the ad post queued and ready. A simple click, and it would be live, broadcast across local forums, business directories, and community pages. The wording was sharp, damning without being crude. Thinking of getting your car serviced at Mike's Auto? Be careful. He might be servicing more than just your engine. Ask my wife, Jessica, for a review. The scheduled launch time was strategic, prime scrolling hours, when people were winding down, mindlessly thumbing through their feeds. Perfect for maximum exposure. With everything in place, I returned home one last time. Jessica wasn't there. It was better that way. I moved through the house with quiet efficiency, gathering the last of what I needed. A small bag packed with essentials, my wallet, my keys. On the nightstand, I placed my wedding ring. No note. No explanation. Just a simple, silent message. By the time the sun had set, I was in my hotel room, staring at my phone, waiting. I didn't have to wait long. The first messages trickled in around 8 o'clock. By 10, they were a flood. Friends. Family. Co-workers. Even numbers I didn't recognize. Some were shocked, some outraged, some just entertained by the spectacle. Mike's wife was among them. The garage's Yelp page was the next casualty. What had once been a handful of 5-star reviews now drowned under an avalanche of 1-star ratings, each one referencing the scandal. Customers voicing outrage, ex-customers sharing their disgust. Screenshots from the flyers had made their way online, circulating faster than I could have anticipated. Jessica's friends, those who had once defended her, who had called me paranoid, began to turn. Betrayal was ugly, but public humiliation was worse. People liked to pretend they supported second chances, but in reality, they picked sides. And she had just lost hers. By midnight, I sat back in my chair, watching as the world I had built for them burned to the ground. Jessica and Mike had chosen their battlefield. I had simply finished the fight. When I returned home, the house felt different. Not in any physical way, the furniture was in the same place, the air still carried the faint scent of Jessica's lavender candles, but there was a shift. The illusion was gone. This wasn't a home anymore. It was just a space where betrayal had been allowed to flourish. Jessica was waiting. Her eyes were red, her face blotchy from hours of crying. She had seen everything by now. The flyers. The online posts. The messages flooding her phone. The walls had closed in on her, leaving nowhere to run. She begged. She pleaded. The desperation in her voice might have moved me once, but not anymore. She wasn't sorry for what she had done. She was sorry for getting caught. Mike had cut her off, she said, turned her away like a bad investment that had lost its value. His business was tanking, customers pulling their appointments, refusing to trust a mechanic who had become the town's biggest joke. He had no choice. Jessica had lost everything in a single weekend. The affair was over. The respect of her friends was gone. The carefully curated image she had built for herself, loyal wife, respectable woman, had crumbled into dust. She tried to spin the story, rewrite history in real time. It had been a mistake, a lapse in judgment, something meaningless. She painted herself as a victim, grasping for sympathy, twisting her own narrative to make herself seem lost, confused, regretful. I wasn't listening. I had already made my move. The divorce papers had been filed. The process was in motion, cold and irreversible. Jessica had wrecked our marriage with her choices. I was just making sure the world saw the aftermath. The days that followed were a slow unraveling. The scandal refused to die. Screenshots of the post had gone viral in town. Someone had even made a meme out of it, Mike's face photoshopped onto an auto repair ad, promising full-service maintenance for you and your wife. It was the kind of humiliation that wouldn't fade easily. Mike's auto struggled to stay afloat. Customers didn't want their cars associated with the shop. People who had trusted him for years now took their business elsewhere. A mechanic could survive bad reviews, but not that kind of reputation. One afternoon, driving through town, I passed by the garage. A large sign was nailed to the front window. For sale. Poetic justice. Jessica moved out not long after. It wasn't a dramatic exit, no screaming, no thrown belongings. Just quiet defeat. A woman packing up the remnants of a life she had ruined, piece by piece. She left behind framed photos that no longer meant anything, sentimental trinkets from anniversaries that had become meaningless. She took her clothes, her jewelry, her shattered dignity. The house was mine now, but it didn't feel like it anymore. I wasn't sure it ever would again. The last message she sent me was a half-hearted attempt at closure. Something about how she never meant to hurt me, how she had been lost, how she hoped one day I could forgive her. I didn't respond. She wrecked our marriage. I just made sure everyone knew who the real mechanic was.